Uh-oh. Hello, hello. We are here from Singular Foods with the Open Lab, and we are here with Vikas Garg. How are you, Vikas?
Hi, Roberto. It's nice to see you again. How have you been?
Great, great. It's a pleasure to see you. How's everything over there? I'm in Florida right now. How is everything over there in Singapore?
Yeah, it's the amazing thing, right, about technology. We're 12-hour time zone different apart, but so you're just starting your day, and I am sort of on the way to ending it. So yeah, it's very nice. As they say in Singapore, it's pretty consistently 90% humidity with a 90% chance of rain and 90
Uh,
degrees 90% of the time.
yeah,
So
sounds
yeah.
sounds kind of similar to Florida, except I think there it's more constant. Here we have a little bit of seasonal change, just a little bit.
Yeah, well, we don't have hurricanes here.
Yeah, that's a good thing,
Yeah,
right? So no
yeah.
hurricanes, no typhoons either, nothing like that, right?
No hurricanes, no typhoons.
Great.
No,
That's great. That's
no.
great.
Thank
Yeah,
God.
here we do. Here we have that issue. So Vikas, so can you tell us, well, go ahead. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up creating a billion? And yeah, go ahead and then tell us
Sure.
what exactly is a billion and how it's changing the world. So go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thanks again for having me on your show. Um, I mean, my background is not that is not that atypical or different. I'm originally from India, immigrated to America when I was still young, and my father had a career opportunity to take us to America, and grew up in New York City, and just went through sort of the ordinary public school system, and then got a job and started building a career and in a totally unrelated industry from what I'm doing today. And then a bunch of things happened over the years that led me to becoming vegan. I always considered myself somebody who was loved animals, but I didn't, when I finally realized I didn't know what that meant, it was a revelation. And going vegan became this incredible thing, which started out as kind of like felt like a sacrifice and felt like a compromise in the beginning. But then after some, I don't know, maybe a year, 2 years, it went from feeling like it was a sacrifice and a compromise that I was making for my values, or my kind of how I wanted to think about my values, my ethics, to then all of a sudden being this incredibly inspiring thing that actually brought a sense of values and purpose to the smallest of things in my life, which was such a beautiful thing, right? Like, I'm no angel. I can't say that I'm just like going around sprinkling good deeds throughout the day. It's not like that. But I just really felt like, for me, I had hit the pay dirt, hit something that really allowed me to grow as a person. And so that became kind of a bit of a North Star for me in my 30s. And then in 2016, I really started to take a much closer look at social media and technology. This is around the time that we were seeing that social media platforms were, causing misinformation to spread around the world, and people were talking about how abusers and criminals were exploiting children on these platforms. And we were talking about election subversion in places like the United States, and just a whole host of kind of problems. And I really liked the idea of social media. I thought that the idea of bringing people together on the internet, was really enabling and empowering. It would create bridges in society around the world. But I think that what happened is a lot of the companies that started these platforms didn't kind of start with any base of ethics or morality around how they built it. And so we ended up with these big platforms where, you know, anything goes, and people are attacking each other, and, you know, they're driving addiction and patterns of addiction. And so in 2016-17, that really got me, I just started thinking about these issues a lot more. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat if would it be possible, or are we that kind of jaded and screwed up as a society? But what if somebody created a social media platform or a marketplace where the time that people spent going like this, you know, the doom scrolling that we've all heard of, or we're all guilty of, what if that time actually created a better person and created a better world? So that was kind of the original thought and idea, and I just kind of became obsessed with it. And that was 7 years ago, and I actually thought that it was so different that it might have a shot, and that even if it failed, it deserved somebody to try. And um, and so we kind of, you know, I started. I was here in Singapore at that time of my at that stage of my career 10 years ago, and then so 2 years into sort of being here in Singapore, I decided to take the plunge. I quit my job in finance, and then just basically enrolled in the coding boot camp and started to work on what today is Abillion. And what Abillion is we're kind of like, you know, we're a consumer review platform and a social media app and a marketplace kind of all wrapped into one. That's really about kind of creating sustainability, making sustainability a second nature for a billion people. That's why we're called Abillion. Is how do we help a billion people go vegan? How do we help a billion animals? How do we plant billions of trees? How do we make, you know, how do we help people take billions of actions every single day that, you know, lead to a much better world? So we created a very different kind of social platform, one where people are sharing information about things that they're consuming. After all, this journey around sustainability or veganism is very much rooted in all the things that we consume. So we wanted to make that more accessible, easy, fun for people. We wanted to give people a voice to really express what they like and don't like, so we could then work with companies and push companies to create more solutions and products and make them better. And that's kind of where we are. You know, fast forward 7 years, and we're now 14.5 million people that have, over the last 7 years, kind of plugged into Abillion, used Abillion to find vegan food at restaurants, to find products, to kind of find each other and build a sense of community. And that's in over 190 markets, over 190 countries now around the world, that we've kind of helped create that community. And it's happened in some of the strangest, least obvious places that I could ever have imagined.
That's great. That's great. So I'm a user of Abillion. So could you tell like our users, let's say somebody who's not familiar with Abillion, how exactly does it work? Like what does a billion user, what exactly do they do, and how does that work?
Yeah, so going back to sort of access, if we want the vegan movement to grow, if we want even the whole global sustainability movement to grow, we've got to make it really easy for people. We've got to make it very accessible for people, and we've got to make it fun and engaging, right? So we kind of, what we did is we built a consumer review platform, and we made it super social. So the user experience feels more like Instagram, and not like not like Google reviews or TripAdvisor, where you just kind of post a review. And then we built the whole thing to really help people find things. So, for example, I just was in Italy for 2 weeks, and every day I was using the Abillion app to find food at restaurants. We have like 25,000 restaurants on the platform in Italy alone. So no matter which little town I went to, uh, you know, I was in the northern half of the country, and no matter which little town I went to, I could open up the Abillion app and find restaurants where, you know, they might not have anything vegan on the menu, but they can make something, and I'd be able to see photos of that. I'd be able to see what people are saying about it, and I'd be able to find, you know, lots and lots and lots of options. So a big part of it is giving people options. It's the same thing for products. We have over 1 million consumer products across food, beauty, and fashion that have been rated and reviewed by our users around the world. So whether you're looking for cruelty-free cosmetics or you're looking for a plant-based analog to yogurt or meat, right, or cheese, we're going to help you find the best one near where you are, the best available options, and we're going to help you see kind of what else is out there in the world. And then of course it's a social network, so you're going to meet people, you're going to converse with other people, you're going to build a community around you, and all of the actions that you take on Abillion, what we do is we kind of back that up with impact. This is something that's very different, and it's a very different way of thinking than the Facebooks and the Twitters and TikToks of the world. When you actually make a choice to consume something vegan, I'll give you one interesting fact: like 60% of our users are meat eaters, and so what we're trying to do is figure out how do we get these meat eaters to consume less meat, right? Dial it down and dial up their plant consumption. And so a lot of how we do that is through gamification in our product. And we want to bring them closer to the life that they're saving. We want to bring them closer to the environment that they're saving, right? Or even the communities that they're impacting. So we've aligned with over 100 charities around the world, mostly animal sanctuaries and farm animal sanctuaries. And every time somebody makes the right choice, the better choice, we back that up. And when they post a photo and post a review, we back that up by giving them a little something to donate, and we back it up by giving them $1 of equity, $1 of effectively stock in our company, because we really believe that ultimately this community, our community that we're building, is really what makes us very special, and our community should own our platform. So we're really proud of some of these things that we do in terms of kind of the gamification to really bring together this movement and grow it.
That's great. Yeah, I've been using Abillion now for about 2 years, and yeah, I use it all the time, like religiously. It's also easier. I'm vegan, and I often eat at vegan restaurants, or at least places that have vegan options. So I always take the picture, and it's always a good feeling. It's like, oh, okay, I got it. I got $1.50. So then it
Yep,
accumulates, and then I usually wait until I get about $50, and then I go ahead and donate to you know
that's great.
one of the causes that are available. So yeah, so I
How
really
much have you raised?
I'm on almost on $1,000. So I'm
$1,000.
gonna
Okay, wow.
celebrate. Yeah, once I hit 1,000, I'll do a little. We can do a little Abillion celebration. So
Sure, sure, would love it.
I'll
I
look.
think I crossed 1,000. I think I crossed 1,000 reviews posted a couple of months back, and we've got people on Abillion who have donated more than $5,000, and that's our company's money. That's
Yeah,
money that we've received from our shareholders, from our investors, who are brought in and believe in our mission.
that's
And I'm
great.
really proud to say that we, as a business, as a tiny little startup, thanks to kind of this work that we've done with our investors and this money that we've carved out from the capital that we have raised, we've donated over 3 million American dollars to save animals, to, take on humanitarian causes, to plant trees and, participate in reforestation, carbon sequestration projects all around the world. And, many of these organizations that we support are really not very well funded, but they're doing important work inside of, not only for the animals or for the environment, but inside their communities in terms of educating people. So it's for us, it's about how do you help somebody make that connection between something as simple as the food that they're eating and
Yeah,
the life that impacts somewhere else in the world. Because my belief is, if I can help someone make that connection, they're going to start changing how they think about something as simple as food, right? Or even the other things that they're buying, the jacket that they're wearing, the shoes that they're buying, stuff like that.
definitely, definitely. And you also have a program that's called the Vegan Dining Club. So can
Yeah,
you go ahead so what is the Vegan Dining Club? Can you explain that, and how does that help? I hear it helps restaurants and
yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just really it's a marketing solution for the restaurant industry. We have 134,000 restaurants that have been rated and reviewed where they're on our platform because they have vegan food. They're not necessarily vegan or even vegetarian restaurants. In fact, more than 90% of the 134,000 restaurants are not vegetarian or vegan restaurants. And that's super important for us. We want to work with businesses and convince businesses to have more sustainable, more healthy, more natural, food that doesn't harm animals, that doesn't harm planet, doesn't harm people. And so in order to do that, we have to work with businesses, even including steakhouses. And what the Vegan Dining Club is it's an opportunity for restaurants on our platform to work with us where we then deliver them customers. In a market like New York City, we have 250,000 people on Abillion. In a market like Los Angeles, we've got about 120,000 people. In Singapore, we've got almost 500,000 people. In markets like Italy, we have 3 million people across the entire country, right? So what we're able to do is deliver. If you're a restaurant in Milan or you're a restaurant in Singapore, or, even in a place like Columbus, Ohio, by working with us, we've created a marketing product. It's called the Abillion Vegan Dining Club. And our intention, our goal is, hey, if you subscribe to that, we take care of all of the work. It's effectively a software package that then boosts a local restaurant business in front of people, in front of the users on our platform. And by virtue of doing that, we might give a business 5,000, 10,000 views a month from our user base in a particular market. And that's going to then generate customers for them. They're going to have more people walking in. They're going to have more people coming in to experience their vegetarian food, their vegan food. And they're going to be coming through because they saw that restaurant on Abillion. So we launched this service back in March, April of this year. And we're close to about 100 restaurant clients, partnerships around the world. We're working with restaurants in Los Angeles, in San Diego, in Berlin, in Milan, in Singapore, in Melbourne, Australia. So kind of just all over the world, and just working to, of course, scale this because it feels really great to actually have a product that creates revenue for these restaurant businesses, but creates that revenue from customers that then are also in a way convincing that business to dive in deeper into sort of supporting the vegan movement. And we love that, right? Because it's impactful, it's a win for the business, it's showing the business that there's money in it, that there's results in it. It's introducing them to a whole new kind of consumer demographic that they don't really know very well. They don't really know that it exists. And at the same time, of course, it's helping people make better decisions around what they eat. So that's our marketing product for restaurants.
That's great. That's great. And wow, so I was also curious where is Abillion the most popular? Where does Abillion have the biggest presence? And what parts of the world?
Yeah, so our top, and from a country perspective, so if we break down about 14.5 million people, from a country perspective, it's 3 million people in the United States. It's also 3 million people, almost 3 million people in Italy. Then it's 1.2. It goes down to about 1.2 million people in Spain, a million people in the UK, and then kind of down from there. Where I'm sitting here in Singapore, it's almost 500,000 people. Which is actually very large penetration because Singapore is a very small country both from a population and size perspective. The whole country is about the size of the New York City area.
Wow.
So yeah, it's kind of, I'd say, where we have the biggest penetration for a larger market is in Italy, where 3 million people out of 60 million people in terms of the country's population is quite large. Is quite large in terms of just the percentage share. That's 5%. And that's our pretty big market. Singapore is also quite sizable. The US, 3 million people across 360 million people is still fairly small, and that's an area that next year I'm going to be increasingly focused on. But in the US, it's really three markets: New York City, Chicago, and Los Angeles that are sort of a good half of that, and then there's a lot of other smaller markets.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, the US being so big, if you could increase that percentage, that would be
Yeah,
that would increase the
but
usage.
I mentioned Spain, and so if we zoom out of Spain for a second and we look at the Spanish world,
Yeah.
it's super interesting. The Spanish speaking world, if I include Brazil in that, and I know, excuse me, Brazil, they speak Brazilian Portuguese, and
Yeah.
our app has been translated into Brazilian Portuguese. But if I include like sort of the influence, call it the Latin influence, that part of the world, South America, Central America, and other parts of the world where they speak Spanish, Spain, of course, that's 20, it's almost a quarter. It's around 23-24% of our user base globally is between Spain, Mexico, Argentina, Chile, Colombia, and Brazil. So that's also something that we get really excited about because the community, of course, there is very passionate.
Yeah, that's what I was actually just about to ask you that if like what markets are you more interested in growing into outside of outside of say Europe, Singapore, and the US. Uh, and yeah,
Yeah,
Latin America is a very interesting area. There's a growing movement there as well in Colombia and Chile, and of course, yeah, Brazil is always huge, and Mexico. I've heard Mexico is where the biggest plant based that's where the plant based movement has grown the most in Latin America is Mexico.
sure,
When I worked for The Economist, that was the those were the stats that we had in
sure,
Mexico. So Mexico is
sure,
also
sure.
is also a big area. So I'm curious to know. So it's great everything that you've done. So what's in store for the future of Abillion? Um, yeah, what do you have? What are your plans? What else is there? Is there anything else? Yeah, anything else? What else can you tell us?
Oh, I mean, look, there's so much, right? I mean, my day to day just really involves just a lot of kind of pressing work that needs to happen to make our product better and to kind of, in a way, like, of course, we're chasing growth. We're an early stage startup. So for us, like the two things that are going to basically keep the lights on at the stage that we're at is really user growth and revenue. And I'd say in the world we're in today, is revenue is super important for all companies. Of course, it's like obvious. I'm not saying anything that's not obvious, but just getting that to kind of grow to the stage where we can kind of become profitable. So we are spending a lot of time on the areas of the business where either like users can transact with each other, so buying and selling to each other and starting businesses on our platform. We've seen that happen a lot. And we have a marketplace. So if anybody that's listening wants to actually sell something that's sustainable, sell something that's vegan, it must be vegan, not just sustainable, but they can actually go on Abillion and post the item for sale or the service, for example, on sale. So that's a big thing that we just continue to kind of refine and make better is our marketplace, our store. We want to work with a lot more businesses around the world. We want to work with larger companies. We want to help small businesses. A lot of our clients right now are small businesses, and they see a lot of value in working with us because we don't create more work for them, but we ultimately impact their bottom line. We help them get more revenue from new customers that they don't have access to right now. And just making our whole sort of ecosystem more user friendly, faster, making it more powerful in terms of the capabilities that we have, increasing the engagement within our community. And I think a big part of that is being in sort of the right place, the right part of the world, building this business. And so, I think we're going to be looking out to set up a US office next year. We've already been tinkering around with hiring a sales team. I've been interviewing people. I've been trialing people for the last kind of 2-3 months to kind of figure out the bits and pieces around sort of developing our sort of our office in the US. Because we have been out here and kind of building everything out here in Singapore for a long time, but the US is our biggest market. And then, yeah, I mean, next year we need to really get out there. We need to kind of figure out, even though we're an online platform, everything we do is very online, right? How do we kind of create more of a visual brand identity that's offline for Abillion? And so this is something that we're quite keen on doing that through more partnerships with restaurant brands, partnerships with consumer products companies, and working with interesting people who are, leading the movement in their own way, whether, they're athletes or they're musicians or actors or, just people or business owners. So we want to really, for us with Abillion, is the dream is really, how do we build this ecosystem that supports the growth, that anybody coming into the ecosystem can find the people and the resources that help them grow whatever it is that they want to build and do in the movement. So that we're just going to continue to, of course, lean into that.
That's great. That's great. I'm curious about, since you're located in Singapore, how is your presence in other parts of Asia, like in Japan, China? How are things over there? It looks like you have more influence in Europe and in the Americas than East Asia, aside from Singapore. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's funny because a lot of people like look at countries in a continent as one, right? Like, so a lot of people tend to look at Europe as one, even though Europe, like every country's got its own language. People tend to look at Europe as kind of one regime, or framework for doing business. It's the same thing with the US and North America. But Asia is really interesting because in Southeast Asia, everything is very different. Like there are no legal principles that kind of cross over. Doing business culturally is very different in every place in Southeast Asia. Mobility is very different. Currencies are very different. They're not fungible like the euro or the US dollar is, right? And so, in fact, actually doing business in Southeast Asia and saying, hey, we're going to like apply one strategy to grow across Asia, it doesn't really work. Culturally, folks in Japan actually do very different things and consume information very differently than folks in China. In China, nobody uses websites. They all use apps, but now they use apps inside of apps. They call them mini apps, inside of super apps. And then, so in different parts of Asia, things just are very differently in terms of how people use technology. What do they use it for? And so the generalist platforms have done very well. Like of course, the Facebooks of the world and TikToks of the world kind of have captured, the attention of the entire region. But when we think about what we're doing, it feels like it's a little too abstract and niche for the vast majority of people right now, as we are in this part of the world. I say that kind of, I don't know, I say that out of experience, but wishing it wasn't so, because China and India collectively have the largest population of vegetarians in the world. India having whatever, probably about 250 million, 250, 300 million vegetarians, and China having around 100. And then whatever percentage of those people don't eat, let's say dairy products. There really aren't clear numbers around, but so let's just call them vegetarian. But in spite of that, those markets are they're very different in terms of growing into them. So, and China, of course, has a very different sort of regulatory regime over technology. And, for example, if you have an app and you have an Android app, there's no Google Play. So the rest of the world uses Google Play as its app store, but Google Play doesn't exist in China. So there's a lot of hoops and hurdles that you need to overcome in order to kind of develop in these local markets. And then the business and the BD side of it in terms of how you grow is also going to be different in every market. We're probably a few years away from really cracking it. But to, your question on what are the other markets that we're big in, prior to kind of COVID and the protests in Hong Kong. Hong Kong was a huge market for us before we started to grow in a lot of other places. Singapore and Australia are our two biggest markets in the region. They're fairly equivalent in terms of the size of a billion users.
Yeah, so growing, yeah, that's the lesson there, right? Like growing a company or a message globally, through a company is more complicated than a lot of people think, right? People, there's so many differences and nuances and legal hurdles and things like that.
Yeah, there are, but look, we've grown into 190 countries, which is
That's
kind of remarkable. Like, I can use Abillion in parts of North Africa and South Africa. We're huge. South Africa is one of our top 10 markets globally. It's remarkable what you can do in tech, and we didn't spend any money in South America or Mexico or Colombia or Brazil. Or it's not about that. It's not like we went on Google or Facebook and started spending money on ads. We tried to create a coalition of nonprofits and really kind of work to build these friendships with them and scale through their work and their supporters. And we found we found these pockets of growth. But it's been, for me, this is a global problem. And I always, from day one, was how do we create something that can be global from day one? Because, if I just say, hey, I'm sitting in Singapore and I'm going to build this for the Singapore market before I do anything else, well, guess what? Whatever works in Singapore, let's say it worked in Singapore, there's no guarantee it's going to work anywhere else. And if it didn't work in Singapore, I would have spent a year and felt like, oh, well, that sucks. It's not going to work, right? Or I would have been told, well, it's not going to work, right? And this is a bad idea. And so I really felt from day one, you know what, this is a global problem. How do we build something that people around the world, whether they're sitting in Argentina or South Africa or Singapore or New York City, they all could use this one thing that helps make their life better? That's been kind of the goal from day one.
That's great. That's great. Well, do you have before we finish, do you have any kind of a message for our viewers here? Would you like to say anything specifically?
Well, if you're listening and you'd call yourself as sort of vegan or vegetarian or part of the vegan movement, or you care about sustainability, I would encourage you to get on Abillion. I talk to restaurant owners all the time. I talk to founders of other businesses all the time that, are really trying to do the right thing. And we all really need to support each other. We need to unify as a movement around the world if we want to achieve our objectives. And I feel like within our movement, we have to make a conscious choice to say, hey, we're not going to spend time. We're not going to spend time on platforms that are actually harming the world and making it harder for us to achieve our personal and sort of, our goals that we have. And so I think that that's super, super important for us to all kind of reflect and really unify as a movement. And I would, of course, encourage you to go out there and support your favorite vegan brand, support your favorite restaurant that's creating great vegan options, have a conversation with the owners, tell them about, why this lifestyle is important to you. And I'd encourage you, if you've got a smartphone and you want something that's fun and engaging but super super impactful, please check out the Abillion app. I think you're going to find that when you sign up for an account, and it's completely free, but I think you're going to find a really beautiful community that really just cares and cares about people, and is very positive and kind and focused on kind of on creating a better world. And so if any of that is interesting, I'd love for you to kind of get involved with what we're doing.
Great. Yeah, I've been using it for about 2 years now, like I said, and I'm hooked. It's really great. Yeah. So I
You're
always
too kind, man. You got to tell people about the 1,001 times it's crashed on you.
Oh boy. Yeah. But all in all, yeah, it's great. So I use it regularly all the time, religiously. People are like, why are you always taking pictures of your food? I'm like, a billion. So
Well, thank you. And thanks, Roberto. I really appreciate it. And I'd say Colombia is a better place thanks to you.
yeah, no problem. Of course. Yeah, I've done a lot of work there. So of course, so Vikas, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with us. It was a pleasure having you on here, and yeah, I encourage all our readers to check out Abillion, learn about it, use it, and it's definitely a great way to make the world a better place. So thank you so much, Vikas, and I hope you have what time is it there? 7:41 p.m.
That's right. Yeah, it's still early.
Yeah, and here on the East Coast of the U.S., it's 7:41 a.m. So on the opposite side. So great speaking to you, Vikas. Thank you so much.
Yeah, really nice, Roberto. Thank you very much for making the time
Yeah.
for me. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Anytime. Have a great evening.
Have a great start to your day. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.